Hello and welcome to Built on Air, a podcast and video series about all things Airtable. I'm your host, Zoe Vanderplu, and I'd like to thank our sponsor, OpenSide. Visit openside.com for products and services that will take your Airtable to the next level. Use promo code BuiltOnAir, one word, all caps, for a one-time $20 credit off of any purchase. This episode, we welcome Sai Warang, a software developer at Shopify living in Ottawa, Canada. Sai originally heard about Airtable from some of his fellow coworkers, and the app piqued his curiosity as a possible solution for one of his ongoing personal projects, creating a household expenses tracker that would satisfy his girlfriend's budgetary ambitions while keeping it simple enough for him to update reliably. Sai walks us through the tracker that he built in Airtable, which is tested and proven, by the way. They're still using it years later. And a couple other bases he built to organize life. A houseplant watering tracker and a mini Goodreads database for research papers. Check out BuiltOnAir.com for more Built On Air episodes. And while you're at it, sign up for our mailing list to get weekly updates on all things Airtable.
I have created this a while ago and I kind of use it all the time, but I might have forgotten some of the things I had in mind while I was doing it. So I'll just go and cover this, and if I miss something, we can come back to this and kind of get into it. Okay, so I think I don't know. I guess people at this point, I think Airtable is super sophisticated, and I'm assuming a lot of these things, there's a lot of knowledge about how to use it, in a way that is there's a lot of interesting tricks and stuff. I think I created this about 2 years ago, I want to say. So I was kind of learning it as along the way, and so I don't know if it uses all the the newest bells and whistles, but
right, yeah.
But with that,
100 years in app world. So.
I know, right? There's so many new things. I think there's this new blocks feature that they released that I was really, this is really cool. This is something that I wanted to build on top of it using the API. So it's pricey. I couldn't, because it's not like an enterprise. I guess they have enterprise pricing, so to speak, but I use it for my personal use, you know what I mean?
Right,
so
yeah,
I find it hard to justify.
Free plan, yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So I have this. Okay, so I can talk about the free plan a bit later. So what do I want to do? Watch me stumble. This is gonna be fun. So first thing is, I think. Okay, so let's back up a bit. This is not a tool to create a budget and stick to it, so to speak. That can be kind of done. If you want to add automation to it and have a script that scrapes your budget and stuff, budget per category or whatever. It's something I tried, but I think it would require something like blocks or something. So This is mostly to. So as I said, I was bad with money, so I just wanted a way to. Just know what I'm spending things on and forget budget. This idea for this was we could budget later. Let's just find out what exactly it is that we spend money on.
Right.
And
first step is awareness.
First step is awareness. So this was kind of this was an exercise in awareness, let's say. And this is not working out so well. I want to go back and oops. So first step is awareness. And so one thing, and I think now at this point, I think even Google has this kind of thing where you integrate forms and stuff with it. But this was so what we have is we have this, so this form is kind of a permalink form that we have on our phones. And so it's let's say you're at a restaurant and you end up buying a meal or whatever, right? So right away, it's one of those save to home screen type things, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's like an app, and you open it and it's just this form. So the idea is that you want to take away as much friction as possible while still keeping it manual. At this point I have some ideas about how I could kind of make this all automated, but this is it's good and bad in its own way. So this is manual, which means that I mean, obviously there's like the downside of putting time in it, but it also makes you more aware of what you're doing. So,
Right. So that's sort of a part of it too, is like forcing you to discipline yourself. Like, I need to
yeah.
own up,
Yeah, exactly. It's like,
what
hey,
I
I spent $500 somewhere. I need to like kind of at least own up to like this little form here. You know what I mean? So the idea is that, so one thing we noticed was that we wanted to know when we spend things and how, so, and where, and when we spend things and where we spend things, obviously to like kind of know how much we're spending per month. We kind of made some special categories to kind of know like where we spend things. This is kind of common, right? I think this is like even in the expense tracking like template that comes with it. I think the thing that I added that I felt like I couldn't find elsewhere was that, well, like the reality of things is that we kind of want to also know. So I wanted to keep track of like how I'm paying for things. So if I have like 3 credit cards and a line of credit and whatever, like I'm not saying that I want to spend for lunch using my line of credit, but like there are expenses that come up that you want to spend using your checking account, or like, you know, like all kinds of things happen. Sometimes you want to put a down payment for something, whatever, right? Like sometimes you need to kind of reach into purchasing power you didn't have. And so I didn't want to just have like a running total of things I'm spending it on. And so I wanted to be able to say how I'm spending, what I'm using to spend things. And so that's the thing I added. So that's kind of like, hey, if you have a dual income household, right? Like your spouse is paying using whatever and you're paying using whatever, and that way you can still have a joint expense spreadsheet, as opposed to like, you know, maintaining 2 or like not knowing how that comes from, like where those expenses came from. In terms of that way you can also keep track of like, hey, my credit card bill is high, why did I, like what have I been doing? And so you could just like kind of group things by the thing that you paid with, and that way, you know, like, you know, if you've been eating out too much or whatever, which was definitely the case with me, which account do you use to pay? And then notes if there's, you know, if like, I mean, honestly, this was like my way of, initially I had this notes field just because I'd make some embarrassing purchase, like I'd buy something dumb that I just, and I knew like this is something I shared with my girlfriend. So I just wanted to be like, hey, I use this for this, like don't judge, whatever. And then report is another way. So this thing I thought was really cool, and we can talk about, I guess once we dive into the actual spreadsheet, we can talk about how this actually pans out. But if you want to be able to see like what is your net income in and out, and what are your expenses per month, you just kind of tag a report to all the like. So I also have a thing for like income, let's say, but it's not on a form. Like only the expenses are on this like cool little form that can show up on the phone. I don't want to make it too cluttered, but the income is something like, so if you want to say like at the beginning of the month, you want to be like, hey, this is my income, this is how much I made, you drop that in the income. And you also add a report to it. So let's say you're doing like a gig or something, right? Like you want to see like how much you got paid for that gig and how much you ended up spending on that like gig to make things. Like let's say you bought like a mic or something and you're starting a podcast, you probably end up making some money, you probably end up spending some money. You can like kind of tag that as report, and you don't have to do it separately. You can all like so you can have like a monthly report. You can have like a by gig. If you do a trip, let's say, you're like, I have. So this is the kind of example I had in mind, where it's like, hey, we did a weekend trip in Montreal, but like we used a whole bunch of like credit cards, and we stayed and like we did some like, you know, like, is that part of our regular budget? Like, no, but then we did this thing, and so we just want to know like how much that cost. So just tag everything as like Montreal trip. And so that would, I guess, if that data like kind of offsets your other like monthly report, at least you know like by how much or why or whatever, right?
Right, exactly.
So things like that is what I kind of wanted to have that I didn't find in the regular template for because I think Airtable had a regular template for expenses, and I quickly like it felt like it was something for like a university student, not for somebody who had like a household with a joint, you know, bank account. I was like, this this doesn't scale for me, and I wanted something that scaled for me. And so, as I mentioned, I was just like, hey, none of this is going to work, right? So that's kind of how I even started this. So that was the idea, so that make it simple to record. That's one thing I needed because I'm super lazy. I'm still this is still an active thing that we do. We've done it since 2017. We still do it, and I'm like, it's still, I'm always the one that's lagging. My wife is like at the end of every, like before going to bed, she'll like add her expenses in, and so she'll be like, hey, you haven't updated your expenses in the last 2 days. Like, what have you been doing? You know what I mean? So it's still a thing that, like, even with all this convenience built in, it's kind of laggy. So I mean, that's kind of the idea. So all right, so expense logs. So this is kind of the overview, let's say, of like, this is everything combined. Obviously now you can kind of dive in and like do by category, right? Like, I mean, this is, I think, standard stuff at this point. So sort by, like, add a filter or whatever. So like, how many Ubers am I taking? Like, God damn it, I take so many Ubers, right? So like, I've added like bus, like this is old data, but like, it's still the same thing. Oh, so, okay. I also wanted to kind of, so one of the things that the idea was to have recurring bills as opposed to like one-off bills, right?
Mm-hmm.
So this is like just like our basic lifestyle costs, let's say, right? And so that's definitely, like, it's all, to an extent, it's the good kind of expenses, which is like, okay, like, you probably negotiated a good deal for all these things, arguably, and then this is what monthly you have to, this is the stuff that almost gets kind of deducted from your account every month without you even knowing. You kind of have to kind of go in and look at your credit card statements and add this in. So it's kind of a pain. So one way to automate this would be like have a Plaid thing. So like Plaid is this service that you can log in with your bank credentials and then pull your transactions data. This would require a considerable amount of programming effort. But that way you can kind of have all your transactions. Well, it's also super creepy because they have all your data now. But if you're willing to kind of make that Faustian bargain, then you end up with like all your data nicely kind of collected programmatically. And then you can just kind of have a script that at the end of the day looks at all your transactions for today and then dumps it in this.
Right.
I've had a half a mind to do it, but I just, the effort involved and also the idea of just giving away all my transaction and like bank account information to Plaid felt a little iffy. But that could ideally be automated. So like some of these things can, like, I just want to know what the due dates are and how much is roughly collected and what the payment method is, let's say, and when did I last pay and stuff. So that way I know my recurring payments are happening.
Right. And I think you hit on a good point too, where it is, there are a lot of these kind of new, startup banking apps and it is, you're like, well, I want to try this out, but is there any way I can try it without having to like connect my account,
Right.
to throw that stuff into a random app before I vet it. So with Airtable too, you can like play around with it, sell it to your wife.
Absolutely.
On board before you start like, really storing like this really private data in something that you don't totally trust.
Yeah. And like I did that with Mint in the past and Mint tried to do a whole bunch of that stuff, like all this like categories and all that. They tried to do it automatically. Some of them I kind of helped them along, but they did it automatically and they just did a shit job of it. So they're like, because I'm in Canada, some of the things that they just didn't realize, like, what's a Fido? Fido is a cell phone provider here, but they're just like not kind of categorize it properly. And so like, my job became then to go into Mint and then like fix all those miscategorized expenses.
Yeah, or like one thing for me whenever I try apps like that is like gas station purchases. I'm like, was this actually gas? Was I just like having a sweet craving late at night and I bought overpriced ice cream or what was it? So it's like that auto categorizing. Well, it's like every time I make a purchase at this one place, that doesn't automatically mean it's just this one category. And then when you go back and you look at it like once a month, I have the same problem as you where I'm like, I'm not going to look at this like every day.
Yeah.
So you're like, what was that? I don't know. I'll just throw it in this category, whatever.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So this way, I mean, if you're on top of your game, then at the end of the day, before you go to bed, like you do a quick, like, okay, these are the 4 things I spent money on. And then that way you always know. And, like categorizing stuff is a hard problem. A lot of people throwing a lot of millions of dollars to kind of do that thing properly using artificial intelligence and whatnot. This is simple. It's only for myself and my wife, like whatever, you know what I mean? Like I will take the like manual cost. So, I mean, like if you're doing things well, then most of the expenses, like in the broad view, let's say in the main view that I'm here, they're all recurring, but clearly they're not because I'm like, there's some groceries and there's some like, I don't know, going to restaurants and going to more restaurants and stuff like that. So So that's the idea. Again, you don't have to create so one thing with Excel is that you kind of have to create multiple tabs for like every month.
Right.
And then you're like, I don't know, just that continuity I like, because it's like if sometimes you have to make a expense in the previous month, that really applies to the next month for like whatever reason. And so like I like to have that continuity to be able to be like, hey, look, and so I mean, obviously that all of this is possible in Excel. It's just like now you need to know your formulas really well. So I wanted like a dumb thing that I can do even when I mean it has to pass that drunk test as well. It's like that you're having like a night out and like you get like a bill like, hey, $80 on cocktails or whatever. It's like you're on your Uber bag and you still want to be able to like kind of just punch it in. That was the intention at least. And so not have to do like, well, you know, this is the end of the month, so I should add it in. No, it's just you open a form, it goes in the right place, moving on. So again, I guess this was like basic filtering done by, I think we talked about this briefly, which was reporting.
Yeah.
So I guess payment methods was the next thing where like, well, these are like, we have like actual like whatever credit cards or like debit cards and all of that here. So, and the due dates are like, let's say it's a credit card, then you need to pay its bill on a certain day, right? So that kind of thing. And so bill payment log, I believe, is what account is paying for whose bill. It's kind of like an internal meta type table. But like if you're using your like, let's say checking account to pay for like 3 different credit cards, I kind of wanted to have that as well.
Right.
Because like, again, it's a thing with joint accounts, right? Like sometimes we're moving money to kind of pay each other's credit card accounts or whatever, like just that kind of thing. And so I wanted a way to kind of log those things as well.
Right.
Yeah. And so then again, so this was the income, which are the types of income, right? Which is like, well, I guess this was my like, let's make it public. So day job, side hustle, whatever, right? So these are the kind of, so income logs are again, their entries here, whereas this is just the income type. And so this will be a type over or as an income source here.
So you're almost just using that kind of linked record field, right, as like a drop down to choose the income source or you know, the card or account. Yeah,
and I didn't want it to. I don't know. I think I wanted to have some like meta information as well. So I didn't want it to just be like a pure drop down with like single value drop down field as opposed to like. So this was kind of, I don't know. This is kind of like a. I don't know if this is like an easy way to model this. I thought this made sense to me, wherein like you have these different types as like your own little tables, and so it takes a little. It's kind of like you have a problem, you want to model it out, right? And that's kind of how it ends up being.
And I think again, just kind of bringing it back to that awareness aspect, you know, where you can look, you know, at your bank account and see like the amount of money you have in it or the amount of money that's on your credit card, but to really get any meaningful insights on, you know, how much am I making from my side hustles versus my day job, or like, wow, you know, like we're spending a lot on coffee or whatever. Definitely you need.
Why do you say that? We actually found out we were spending a lot on coffee. I massively curbed it. It was crazy.
So then what is your and your wife's process? Like, do you know, after you guys put in these transactions daily or semi-daily, right? She prods you to do it, falling behind. And then, you know, once a month, do you kind of look at the reports and analyze, or kind of what do you do once you've collected everything?
Yeah, so that's a good point. So, I mean, as I said, one of the things so this is the kind of report field, right? Which is like I mean, by default, I'm going to do monthly reporting so that we know like what income came in and what income, and what were the total expenses, what are the total bills, and then how much net are we, let's say, we're supposed to have. And so, I mean, obviously, like you could have like your savings account as well over here, right? Which is like, hey, I kind of spent it in this like savings account, and so it's almost like a bill payment. So, I like, honestly, I think we wanted like just awareness, and we still do. I think our like expenses have changed over time and our spending habits have changed. There are like but our life has overall like kind of also changed, that maybe maybe this needs more updating. So like one of the things that I really wanted was like an automatic trigger whenever we, let's say, hit a certain budget point. Like, let's say we have, for this month, we had like a certain, like, you know, like let's say a report had like for this by category, you had different amounts, and then like whenever like a cumulative amount is hit, you get a text message or something.
Right. It's like, hey, slow down on that coffee. Like,
right, exactly. Yeah, exactly. So that would take a bunch of like, I guess, programming effort that I haven't put in the time for, and I don't know how much. Like the marginal utility of that felt kind of low. I think at this point we kind of are like we're good with being aware and kind of calling it out whenever we see that we're doing something that's kind of far-fetched. So this is, I mean, obviously it doesn't end here, right? Like the real thing is that when we have conversations about how much what we're doing, like financial conversations, let's say, this serves as the like corpus of data, so to speak, to have that conversation. And that conversation can vary. So let's say we have a goal that we want to, let's say, make a down payment for XYZ, then we can be like, hey, it looks like we need to curb on this. Like we need to kind of curb our things because we've clearly done like, you know, like this type of expense that feels kind of odd. And honestly, it's not even very science. I mean, I wish it was like, again, I still am not very great with money. So it's not like I have like this science down where it's like, I think, you know, like according to most people, this is how much they spend on like this kind of thing. And so we should be hitting that goal. For us, it's almost like this doesn't feel right. So it goes by feeling. It goes like, hey, we're doing this thing, looking at the numbers, this doesn't feel right. How do we make it lesser so that it feels right? Let's say and that's the conversation. And if we can have that kind of conversation, we at least have that peace of mind as to we know like what feels right and what doesn't. And that's already such a like relief. That's already so much better than just like kind of flying in the dark.
Yeah, I like how this is sort of, you know, you're not like, oh, well, I need to automate this so it can do everything and, you know, kind of manage for me. But it's just really, you know, kind of creating that basis where you and your wife can be on the same page and have that conversation.
Exactly. Really, we just want it to be a way for us to have like a clear conversation, and there's the data, and then we can talk about it. And so this is not an automated solution that'll like make sure that like this much is sent to your retirement account and this much is sent to your whatever account. It's not that sophisticated because I don't know. I don't even know if there's value to doing that. I think it's better that I have a good mental model of how I am with money, and I can make the next decisions as required.
Right. Yeah, for sure.
You know, because
keep a little bit of human in the equation.
Yeah. And I mean, if it's like something automated, like if I want to like automate my savings, I just make that as a recurring thing, right? And add it over here. And so the money goes from this account to this account, and that's it. Right, I don't need to like make a whole big deal about it. I think it's just, and obviously if you want to like kind of manage an active portfolio, there's like so many better, like more sophisticated tools for that kind of thing. I have no way I'm going to build this on Airtable. This is like make sure our lifestyle is not off the rails. That's the goal of this thing. And
for sure.
And it's kind of achieved that. And I would say, at least personally, we've been using it for like, I think this is our third year running. So
that's awesome. Yeah, that alone kind of shows the testament of time, right?
Yeah.
This time where it's really easy to kind of jump ship for other apps that you guys have been using it that long.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, it just shows that it works for you. Yeah. So we'll definitely include a link in the show notes to your Airtable Universe profile so people can check out the space.
Cool.
And also, we don't really have time to get into any others, but you do have a couple of other bases, I think, on your profile that people can check out. Maybe you could just give us a quick, like, 1 or 2 sentence taste of.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm just kind of scrolling back. As you can see, I'm trying to get to there you go. Give me 1 second. I don't know how to get to there you go. So another point of contention with me and my wife, which is like, my wife loves plants. I like to have them in the house, but I don't do anything to keep them alive, and left to my own devices, they will die. Also, my wife likes varied plants, which means that it's not something as simple as like, well, okay, I'll set a timer and I'll like let's say my wife is away to kind of seeing her friend, or she's out of town, or she's I think that the reason we had to do this because she was off to Vipassana for, I think, like this like silent meditation thing for like 10 days. And so it was like, well, I wasn't going then. And so it was like, hey, these plants need to be kept alive. And so they all have different watering schedules. And that's like not great for me, I don't have that much brain space to kind of know about plant water.
Right. No, I'm very much like your wife. I'm a plant person, and
Right.
I kind of just have an intuitive sense of like how
Right.
often I want to water things, and nothing is synchronized.
Right.
To instruct my fiance on how to water things, it's very complex. Like,
Yeah.
that seems like it shouldn't be because it's just plants, but
yeah, but it's not. So this is the kind of, so we have like plants all over the place. So first of all, I'm going to forget that there's like 50 plants in the house. It's ridiculous. And so I'm going to forget that there's like this tiny thing on this tiny windowsill somewhere. So what I did was, when she was going, I took pictures of all the plants in the goddamn house, and I kind of tried to get their name down. And sometimes I didn't get their names right. So I literally said pointy leaves. So that's how I would remember it.
Right.
Like, hey, pointy leaf plant in that corner. All right, what's its watering schedule? Where is it located? So for me, it's like I just go through this thing when she's away, and then it's like, oh, that plant there. Okay, that one's in the basement, I think. So I'll go there, and then I'll look at the schedule, and it's like, okay, this one doesn't need to, because if you overwater a plant that doesn't want to be watered a lot, you'll kill it. And if you underwater a plant that needs to be watered a lot, you'll kill it too.
Yeah.
And so, we like, when she went away like a couple times, we had these like emaciated, sick-looking plants, and so it was just not a good time for the plants.
Right.
And
Yeah.
so
if it's anything like me, I'm like, I've invested a lot of money in these plants. Like,
right.
You know,
money and effort, and like you have to repot them, and like they have babies, and there's they have this whole like life, man. And you leave it to me, and I just like completely ignore their, it's disrespectful. So I kind of figured out a way to, and so this was actually the thing that I posted to Universe back in the day, because I thought this was kind of eclectic in its own way. And so
I'm definitely going to steal this one, I think, for when I go out of town and my fiance stays.
Yeah. And so this way, you can just give a link to people. Like, let's say you have friends who are taking care of your plant, right? So that way you can just be like, hey, go on these days, and like, these are the plants, and you leave some water for them. And so you just they just know where to water, how long, and how much. And that was kind of the idea. These are the plant cards individually. And so, I mean, if you want to be super, I don't think we ended up going with the dates, but I mean, if you're going away, you can actually have dates as well. So it's like, hey, water this one on that day. And then, do you want to do it at what time and whatever? And you can kind of specify all of that, give the link to somebody, and you can make like a publicly or like a privately accessible link or whatever, right? And so you plop it up on the phone, and it's just kind of keep watering it. And that's like, you don't have to kind of make like extensive notes, and it's something that can be reused for other people as well.
I love that. And then you had one last base. Do you want to talk about that really quick before?
Sure thing. Yeah. So this will give away the kind of nerd I am. So
I love it when Airtable is used for nerdy things.
So
it's good.
Are you aware of Goodreads?
Yeah, so I've heard of Goodreads. I don't use it though.
Yeah, Goodreads is a way to track books that you might be reading. So they have like really fun things. Like you can have a reading challenge, and you can have friends on there. And so you can be like, hey, you can write reviews for books, and it becomes kind of, I want to say it becomes like a healthy kind of like, you're in that headspace where like you're with friends that we're all trying to read something. So if there's like a popular book of the year, like, like books like, I don't know, like I think there's a lot of people who read like a lot of nonfiction. So it's like that, what's that book that was really popular? The Subtle Art of Not Giving a #K, things like that. So like there's people who like read lots of books, and they have like this reading challenge or whatever, and so you can see their reviews on books and stuff. So I'm pretty avid, I want to say, on that site. I try to average like 30 books a year or whatever, and so I like write a review at the end of it and all of that. And then nerdy Sai decides to like, well, sometimes I want to read like papers as well, like research papers, let's say, and there's no way to track that.
Right.
Like there's a couple of sources online where you can like download free research papers. And so like it'll be like archive, which is this archive.org, and then there'll be some like university websites and all of that.
Paywall.
Yeah, and then there's paywalls and all that stuff. And so I had like a bookmark, right, of like just random research papers, and then I was like, why did I add this to my like bookmark? I forget why I added something and things like that. Anyway, so the idea was to kind of have a central place where I keep track of research papers, like where they're located, If I make any notes, I want to be able to add them here. So like this spreadsheet format's kind of shitty for notes. So what I do is I take notes on another, let's say, tool, and then I will just have like a permalink, kind of like a permalink from there in here. That's what I do it now. But so I'll like, maybe I'll make notes in the notebook. And so I'll like leave references to what I noted down, subjects, whether I've read it or not, and reading log, I believe, is, well, so if there's like any like references that I find, let's say I read a paper in one sitting and then I found a bunch of, let's say, references at the end of the paper, then I kind of want to take notes quickly, add them here. And sometimes those external links have their own attachments and I want to like review them later or something. I don't want to like open the paper every time, go to the end, then copy the link, move to the browser. Like I just wanted to have like this like simple metadata stored around after I read a research paper, because a research paper is just like a PDF in a browser, right? Like, or sometimes you print it out if it's like many pages, and it's just like so haphazard. Like I found like some of it was in notes, some of it was in bookmarks, some of it is like in Slack conversations, some of it is like, it's not like I read a lot of research papers. It's not like I'm a very scholarly person or anything, but there'll be times that I'll read something and it's like super interesting. It'll be fun to discuss with. Something like, artificial intelligence, like something scary or something about like genetics or neuroscience or whatever.
If you're excited enough to take notes on something, like I'll do the same thing where I'm like, I'm into this, I want to remember it, I'm taking notes, I feel really engaged, and then those notes will be like in some random place where even if I do come across them again, I'm like, well, this isn't the time that I want to read these or like look at them.
Exactly.
Yeah, I like having that, pseudo Goodreads, right, in one place.
Yeah,
especially.
Exactly. And the one thing that like happened to me a lot was like I'll add some papers and then I like forget why I added them, because it's like I came across something that like I'm reading a book and it like refers some paper or whatever, and like I'll just like put it in my bookmarks, and then the like some of these research papers have very arcane titles, so it's like, wait a minute, what was I thinking? Why did I add this? What? You know what I mean? And so now there's like a place to kind of have that metadata. So if I'm like ever adding a paper, like I'll make sure I add it here. I'll write the notes like, hey, like my friend says this is a good thing to read, or like a book says something. So I just kind of have some context when if I'm like trying to read it and I have some time.
Yeah, I love that. A very simple, elegant solution to track everything you need. Well, thank you so much for kind of giving this. I love this little tour of your like, personal life, right? Managed by Airtable. And then I'm sure your wife, like, it's also kind of cool to see where you're like, yeah, so I onboarded this, for my household, right? So you got
pretty much,
on board. Her plants are happy, your finances are happy, all of that. And before we sign off, let people know if they want to, contact you. Of course, we'll have your Airtable Universe link, but where else can they go online to find you?
That's a good question. I don't have a very well cultivated online presence, just a little, but there has been a couple of people who've reached out to me from the Universe link. I think there's a Twitter bio or something, like there's a Twitter handle. And I've had a couple of people who have kind of become online e-friends with, sort of, because it's just like, hey man, personal finance is fucking crazy. Like, sorry, pardon my French, but it's like
feel my pain.
Cool. Yeah, and it's like, hey, this is something that kind of captured the reality of the situation, because there's a bunch of stuff online, and it's always like kind of meant for a certain type of demographic, and it's like it stops being used within 2 months. As soon as the first hurdle comes along, it's like, how do I add this? Nah, screw it.
Like, right, you're like, I'll do it later, and then you're like, it's been a month. I'm not gonna do it.
Exactly. So
we'll tell everyone can reach out to Sai on Airtable Universe and chat about plant schedules and finances and all that.
Absolutely, and anything else, I'm happy to chat about too. Awesome. So I think there is a Twitter thing. Yeah, CYPRUSAD on Twitter, which is an alternate spelling of like Sai. It's Sai Prasad, and so I just spell it alternatively on my Twitter handle.
Very cool. Yeah,
that's a little bit about my life.
Cool. Well, thank you so much, Sai, for taking the time to chat with us, and good luck with the rest of the winter up there in Canada.
Thank you. I will need it. And it was a pleasure to chat with you. Thanks for getting in touch. It's been an absolute blast. And till next time.
Thanks, Sai.